follow these instructions here. Start with Unit 1 and piece all of Units 1 through 7. So then you'll have this section here finished. And then I go on to the next section, which is here, Units 8 through 12. You piece all the units and then piece all of these units together. And continue the same way with this section and this section. And you start in order from up here and go in order down to here. When you have all 4 of these bigger sections done, then you're going to piece them together. And you look down here for those instructions. So you'll sew 21 to 22, then sew the 1-7 section together, then the 8-20 section to it, and so on. So you just follow these. Then after you finish the left-hand side, do the same thing for the center, and do the same thing for the right-hand side. And then when all 3 of these pieces are done, you'll sew those together. And one thing to remember is, as you sew these units together, so let's look at Unit 1 and Unit 2 and 3. The first thing you're going to do is sew 2 to 3. After you've sewn 2 to 3 and you know that everything is okay, everything is right, and you checked fabrics and everything, you can remove the paper from just the seam line here. Don't remove any other papers, just from the seam line. And then once you sew this part to Unit 1 and you're happy with it, then remove the paper from this seam line. So every time you stitch something together and you know it's correct, you can remove the paper from just the seam line. All the other papers you'll need as a guide to stitch them together. I want to show you a tip about stitching the units together. This is Unit 44 and this is Unit 45, and we're to stitch those together. And if you look at the diagram here, here's 44 and here's 45. And I just like to line mine up exactly as it's shown to make sure I have them on the right position. So 44 is here, 44 is here, and 45 is here. And you'll pick these up and match these 2 sections here, or units. You're sewing the 2 units together. And most of the time, you're not going to have straight seams, so you want to make sure that you've got them placed correctly. Here is the corner, and to make sure that I've lined these up, I place a pin through the corner here of the paper, just like that, and then place a pin through this paper, and I have to turn it so that looks pretty close. And then you want to make sure the pin is perpendicular to the fabric, and then put it in like this. And go to the other side, and here they're a little bit different. This one you can probably tell that if you start stitching here in this little V and stitch straight across, it'll be your 1/4 inch. So you can use that as a guide. But if you didn't have that, you would match it the same way. So put your pin through here and then look at the other side and make sure that that's fairly close. I found that if you are very sure about your beginning and your ending sides or ends, that the rest comes out just almost perfect. Because it's paper, it's not going to move. Just make sure you have them lined up, the edges are lined up, and stitch right on the stitch line, which is a solid line. And I found I don't use the 1/4 inch foot because I've trimmed each one to a 1/4 inch, and if I follow the stitch line, I know I have a good 1/4 inch. When you have a big piece like this with fabric underneath it, before you trim it and before you sew it, you'll want to put a little glue on it, like on this end, and just keep the fabric in place as you sew it and as you trim it.